Well, hello, dear friends, and welcome again to our pre-Shabbat sermon and song. You know, it seems like a long time ago because so much happened this week that we met together. On the other hand, it seems like just yesterday. This idea of time going quickly and slowly at the same time is something which has really become more evident over the last few weeks, few months that we've been getting together. But whatever happened the past week, we're ready for Shabbat. And Shabbat is that holy day, that special day, with that energy to take everything that has happened in our past week and transform it to something good. I would like to dedicate tonight's evening to a very close friend of mine who had a very near tragic story, survived a pretty traumatic experience, a near-death experience, and thank God is alive and healthy to tell us all about it. And I'm going to share his story during the sermon part, but I want to dedicate this for the merit, for a very continued speedy recovery, and things should only continue to go well for him and his wife and his friends. But we start our program with the nigun, with the very joyful melodies of Shabbat, melodies that put us into the tune, into the mood, that talk to our soul, open up our soul, so we can ready to absorb the special energy, the special presence of Shabbos. So our dear friend Muttel, our resident soul opener, we'll call it, right? Not just show opener, but the soul opener with his nigun, a nigun which is a tune and a melody associated with some of the prayers of Shabbat. Mizmor LeDavid, right?
Yes, it is.
Right. Muttel, go for it. Open it up.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Mizmor LeDavid, Avulad Hashem B'neli, Avulad Hashem Kavod V'Oz, ay, 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 Avulad Hashem Yenelim, Avulad Hashem Kavod V'Oz, ay, na, 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 ay, na, 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 ay, na, 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 ay, na, 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 ay, 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 da, da, ay, 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 da, da, ya, da, 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 ya, da, 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 ya, da, 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 ya, da, 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 ya, da, 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 ya, da, 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 ya, da, 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 ya, da, 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 ay, 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 da, da, ay, 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 da, da,
Shkoyach Muttel. And after our little brief conversation together, Muttel will be back. Matt Check will be back with a few more songs to enliven our spirit, lift us up to experience the incredible energy of Shabbos. So, my dear friends, long before there were 24-hour hotlines, there was a phenomena in the shtetl that the rabbi's home was always available 24 hours because people would have serious questions and serious issues to deal with, and therefore the rabbi would be up many hours of the night, very late. It was back in the day, and you couldn't call the rabbi on the phone or text or email or WhatsApp. If you had a serious issue, you went to the rabbi's house. So the rabbi's house was usually filled with but they always had the rabbi up many late hours in the middle of the night counseling people. Well, this little thief came to the shtetl, and he decided that the best time to rob people was during the night when they're all sound asleep. He would come down the chimney, through the fireplace, grab whatever he can, and run out the front door. And therefore, he'd make his quick escape. It worked pretty well because People were sound asleep. However, he made a little mistake. He picked on the wrong house. He decided that he was going to rob a particular house, looked pretty unassuming, and he goes down the chimney, comes out the fireplace, and right there in the living room, the rabbi is sitting at the table with the light on, studying his books. Rabbi picks up his head, sees this interesting fellow coming out of his fireplace, and this guy is stuck, caught in action. But he was a quick thinker. He says, Rabbi, I have a question for you. I came to ask you a question. The rabbi says, what can I help you with? And he says, my question is, how do I get out of here quickly? See, my friends, many times in life, what we say is we find ourselves in a pickle, right? You don't know exactly how you got into this. You don't know how to escape. You hope there's like a magical hole in the floor that you can escape or run out, but not always can you. And you're just right there, and you have to deal with the reality. And if I may say, I think we're all in a big pickle these days, because as we were trying to set our lives to move out and open up more, lessen restrictions, and bam, this week, no major earth-shattering events took place, no major anti-Semitic comments, but one comment from our governor and many others changed a lot of things. They created new restrictions. They drew back the opening of certain things due to the spiking of coronavirus cases. So here we thought we're moving forward. Now we're moving backwards. We're in a pickle. What do we do? And it's at these times that we realized that so many things we always think we may be in control, but sometimes, time to time, we realize we're really not in control. And then what? What do you do when you're not in control? Because we are not in control of what we can do. There's guidelines, there's regulations that I highly recommend we all need to follow for our own safety, but there are restrictions nonetheless that allow us to feel like we're out of control. And once again, my dear friends, a timely message from our timeless Torah. This week's portion, we talk about what happens when you feel stuck. What happens when something happens in your life and you feel like, oh my gosh, where do we go from here? This is the end of the fourth section, the fourth of the 5 books of the Torah. And it talks about the end of a very special period in Jewish history. When the Jewish people left Egypt, they were supposed to go straight to Israel, to the Holy Land, with a little pit stop at Mount Sinai. But something didn't go right, and they ended up staying in the desert for 40 years. Hence the title or the term, the Wandering Jew. They wandered in the desert for 40 years until they got to Israel. Well, this week's portion, we talk about the end of those 40 years. And the Torah, in a sense, recounts all the stops on the way from the Exodus to Egypt until their arrival in the Holy Land of Israel. In fact, this week we read 2 portions of the Torah. One of them is named Maseh. Maseh means travels, journeys. And it opens up, these are the journeys that the Jewish people took from the land of Egypt until now they're about to enter the Holy Land of Israel. And there was many different stops on the way. Now, it's a beautiful history lesson to know what happened in those 40 years. But we always have to ask ourselves the question, what relevance does it have to me other than just historical data? The Torah is not our history book. The Torah is our guidebook. And everything we learn, everything we read about, although maybe exciting to know the history, must always answer a question. How is it relevant to Yudi Shem Tov in 2020? And boy, is this relevant. Because the Baal Shem Tov, no relation, the founder of the Chassidic movement, who lived in the late 1700s, early 1700s actually, said that these 42 stops of the 40 years, this journey, is really not the Torah telling us about the journey of the Jews back in Egypt. It's our journey. It's our life. See, we all leave Egypt. We all leave a constriction when we're born, and where we leave our mother's womb and we become independent and free people. And life is a journey. Life is a constant journey with many, many pit stops. So we leave the constrictions of our mom's womb, and then until the end of our life, when we reach the spiritual Holy Land in the world to come. And these journeys that the Torah talks about are your personal journeys. There are stops that you make on the way. And lesson number one we have to realize is that life is made full of many different stops and many different chapters. And when we look back, we need to see how we grow on those stops and in those chapters. And these 42 stops that the Jewish people had during the 40 years from Egypt to Israel reflect the 42 stops in your own life. But wait a second. What is that saying? Is that saying that my life is predestined? Is that saying that everything that happened to the Jewish people going from Egypt to Israel is going to happen to me? And there's a lot of negative stuff. There's a lot of bad things that happen on the way where people were punished and people did wrong things and people were complaining and fetching and rebelling. The golden calf, one of the greatest sins of all of history, one of the greatest rebellions. Does that mean I have a golden calf moment? I don't remember ever worshiping an idol. So what did the Baal Shem Tov mean that these 42 stops is a map of my own life? When don't I have choice? Don't I make my own decisions that guides me through life? And here is the beautiful lesson. Here's the beautiful message about this week's portion. And it leads into a greater conversation, not the place for a sermon, but definitely one of our other classes that I'm planning, about predestination and freedom of choice. Does God guide our lives, or do our choices guide our lives? And this is where the portion gives us a very beautiful inspiration. Maybe not an answer that will satisfy us completely, will definitely give us a context, being able to approach such a critical question. And the Torah says that in all these places where the Jewish people stopped, even the worst, where the worst of things happened, it didn't have to be that way. And it gives us an example. One place was called Kivrot HaTava, which literally means buried by lust. And the reason that's named that way, because many Jewish people died in a plague as a punishment for them lusting things of materialistic nature. So Kivrot HaTava, they were buried because of lust. But here the Baal Shem Tov teaches us it didn't have to be that way. Something needed to be buried in that place, yes, but not the people. If they would have chosen the positive, it would have been something good, that they would have buried their lust and become holier people and therefore move on. So you can read that two ways. Either they were buried because of lust, or they buried their lust. One is a negative and one is a positive. And this is the beautiful message that the Torah is teaching, that although what happened was not good, but what could have happened was good. See, there was a potential to go each way. People were destined by the Almighty to come to that place, yes. But what the result was of being in that place was a person's own choice. And you know why this is such a beautiful lesson? Because it doesn't only empower us for choice, it allows us to fix the mistakes that we have done in our own lives. See, we can all look back at moments and things in our life that were, let's say, Kivrot HaTa'ava moments, or golden calf moments, or negative things that we have done. But when we realize that the negativity of that moment wasn't predestined, it was a choice that we made, but there was also a potential good that could have come out of that moment. Hey, I can go back and fix it. I'm never doomed by the negativity of my past. I'm never brought down and defined by the negative things that happened in my past. I may defined by the negative choices I made in my past. And if that's all it is, I can now choose to do well. I can now choose to do good. And this is the beautiful message about the journey of life. It's too many times in the journey of life, We look back at things maybe with regret, or maybe not with regret, but I wish I could have done that moment. I know we're all thinking about what could I have done different then, but it's the past. That's not what the Torah teaches. Every past has a potential of good that still depends on your choice. And you can fix it and move forward with positivity. Because what God destines for us is opportunity to choose in certain areas, good and bad. And if we made a bad choice in a certain area, we can always choose to do positive. And this is the story I want to share with you today. Because everything is basher. And the fact that my friend called me about this story this afternoon lends itself so beautifully to the power of this message, creating even more relevance. I'm going to change some details in the stories because I don't want to give away the identity of this individual, who many of you may know. But he's a good friend of mine, and we're going to call him Matt. Now, it's not Matt Check, right? Matt, is that you? Wasn't you, right? This is not a story about Matt. In fact, I'm not going to confuse everyone. Let's call him Jim, all right? So Jim is taking a ride on his bike, and it's just a very casual ride. He didn't even put on his helmet. And beautiful day. He takes this was on Tuesday, I think, and he takes a ride. And as he's coming home, somehow the tire pops on something, and he goes flying. He goes flying, and his head crushes into a rock. And he looks around him. Nobody's there, none of his friends, none of his neighbors. He's alone, and it's all full of blood. And somehow he gets the strength to pick himself up, and he happened to have the keys to his car in his pocket, and he landed right near the car. He gets himself into his car, rushes over to St. Mary's, gets into the ER as quick as possible. That itself is a miracle. That he was able to pull himself and do that. And he had the key in the car. He gets the ER, and they wash him up. They stitch up his head. Looks okay. He'll be able to go back. He was conscious, obviously. But they figure they'll take a CAT scan before they send him home. They take a CAT scan, and the doctor comes in with what appeared to be very grim news. He holds his hand and says, "Jim, you have some major cracks in your skull, and the blood is seeping into your brain. We need to take care of this. You're not going home today." You can imagine the fear that Jim had while he was hearing this news about possibly brain damage, of hemorrhaging in the brain, of blood. And we all know, God forbid, where that can go. Cracks in the skull. Nobody wants to hear that. And at that moment, he began to pray. And he opens his prayer and says, "God," this is what he tells me, "you probably don't like me because I haven't prayed in many, many years. And you probably don't even want to answer me. But," and he goes on with his prayer. The next night, he was released, and he's home recovering. The swelling is down, and he's going to be okay. He's walking around. He just has to rest. God answered his prayer. And may he continue to heal. But what story struck me was the introduction to his prayer. Why does a person feel that we have to excuse ourselves to God? I know this Jim. He does a lot of good things in this community. He does a lot, and Jim is not the real name. He does a lot of good things in this community. He does a lot of good, generous acts of tzedakah and kindness. He has a lot of merit to go to front of God to pray. But unfortunately, many times we feel ourselves inadequate for the things that we have done wrong. And we define ourselves by what we haven't done, or by some negative spiritual choices that we have made, and therefore feel inadequate to go before God and pray. And this is where this Torah teaches us this beautiful message, that we're never defined by a negative past, certainly in the eyes of God. The negative past is merely a decision, a result of a choice that could have gone in a positive way, in which we always have the potential to choose and make good things. So, my dear friends, this Shabbos, I want you all to think about your life. Not today's life, not the pickle that we're in now, but the past, the things that you may have, the different stops of your journey. And which stops of those journey may you have made a wrong choice. May you have decided something that maybe you regret. But always remember at that point, there was a possibility to choose good. And try to think about the good that you can bring out of that experience. Because every experience can teach us. You know, there's a saying in someone's office, everyone entering this office makes me happy. Some when they come and some when they leave. See, every experience has two sides. And we can always go back. So in this Shabbos of journeys of life, think about your journey of life until now. Because whatever was in the past can be rectified. And think about the journey of life going forward to always be able to realize that even things that come in your life that are negative have positive potential, and choose to see the positive, especially in our times when things seem to be so negative. And we could be defined not by our own negativity, but you could be defined and let your mood be defined by all the negativity around you. Don't do it. I know it's not easy. Trust me, I know it's not easy, but don't do it. Everything has the potential good. Every journey and stop in life, the Torah teaches, can have bad, but has a potential of good. If others choose to bring out the bad, don't make that your choice. Make your choice the choice of good, whether it's in politics, whether it's in just social gatherings, whether it's in family. There's a lot of negativity in this world. Be the one who chooses to see the potential good. People may not like you for seeing potential good. You may be seen as somebody, an outcast, but don't worry. The positive energy will become contagious. So I'll finish with a little cute story about a tailor who was talking to his friend who was a very learned scholar. And the learned scholar was talking about his pedigree. And his pedigree was, he was a son of a rabbi and a great sage and the grandson of a great sage and went back generations. And he turns to the tailor, and what's your pedigree? I'll tell you the truth, I don't know. My father died when I was a boy. I never heard the story of my family. And my cousins took me in to be an apprentice in their tailor shop. And the first lesson I learned in life is what I live by, and that's my pedigree. And what was that lesson, they asked him? In Yiddish, it goes like this. The basic message of a tailor is, alte Sachen verrichten, neue Sachen nicht kahle machen, which means in English, what is a golden principle of a tailor? When somebody comes with an old torn suit, make sure to fix it. And when you get a new suit to sew for someone, make sure you don't ruin it. And this, my friends, is the message of our portion. Look back at some mistakes or some decisions or some things you may have said and fix it. And make sure as you go forward, don't ruin it. And choose good, and it will be good. Have a wonderful Shabbos and a meaningful Shabbos. And we invite Matala back on to sing 2 nigunim, 2 songs for Shabbos. One is his very favorite Yedid Nefesh, which is a Kabbalistic song that is sung as Shabbat enters, which we'll sing in the synagogue a little later. And then we'll sing with another special song that I'll introduce shortly. So Matal, Yedid Nefesh, right? There we go.
Yedid Nefesh Avarachaman Meshuchavda El Ritzona Garutavda Yemo Hayam Ishtachave El Mul Hadara Ye'aralo Yedidutach Inofet Su
Yasher Koach Matal. And we're going to conclude with an upbeat song for a very serious time. We now, in the calendar, the Jewish calendar, we find ourselves in a very special period of 3 weeks in which we mourn for the destruction of our temples in Jerusalem throughout history and other things. It's a time of mourning and deep spiritual reflection, but it's also a time of yearning and hope that in the future, our third temple that we were promised and envisioned in the prophets will be built shortly. Yibana HaMikdash, may the temple be rebuilt speedily. Matal has a very upbeat song, a melody for Yibana may be built, because although it's a serious time, a sad time, a reflective time, but in Judaism, as we said before, everything is a combination. There's reflection and sadness over the past, but hope and positivity over our future, which I think will be reflected and mirrored in the coming song, Yibana Migdash. So Matala, let's go.
Yibane, Yibane, Yibane HaMikdash, Yirtzion, Yirtzion, Yirtzion Timale, Bane, Yibane, Yibane HaMikdash, Tzion, Yirtzion, Yirtzion Timale, B'Sham Nashir, Shir Chadash, over Nanale, B'Sham Nashir, Shir Chadash, over Nanale, Yibane, Yibane HaMikdash, Yirtzion, Yirtzion, Tzion Timale, Yibane, Yibane, Bane HaMikdash, Yirtzion, Yirtzion, Tzion Timale, B'Sham Nashir, Shir Chadash, over Nanale, B'Sham Nashir, Shir Chadash, over Nanale,
Wherever everybody is, clap. That was great, Matal. Thanks a lot. And I want to wish everyone a good Shabbos, an upbeat Shabbos, a reflective Shabbos, a spiritual Shabbos. And I want to remind everyone that to go on our website, virtualjewishcenter.org, to find the latest and the upcoming programming. The schedule is updated on Sunday morning and or late Saturday night, but Sunday morning you'll find all the schedules and possibly a surprise for Sunday morning if I can get it together. Otherwise, I will resume our programs throughout the week and next week and the following week, and just stay updated either through our email or through our website. But for now, we all know what's coming without any question, and that is Shabbos. So have a wonderful Shabbos, and we'll see you next week. Matal, you there? Matal, say goodbye to everyone. Let me put you off mute. And together we will celebrate the wonderful Shabbos, and hopefully it will give us reflection on our past stops of our journey and the coming stops of our journey. Let me just see. Thank you, everybody, for your comments. Have a good Shabbos to all of you. I'm reading the comments now, and may we all meet each other soon again. Stay tuned.
Shabbat